While Procreate may look intimidating, the app is accessible to anyone with an iPad that has the desire to doodle, draw, or paint. In this course, you'll learn about the interface and tools, including the power behind Procreate's brushes, how to create a custom color palette, and why working with layers will enhance your drawing process. Even how to paint on a 3D object, plus so much more. In the process of creating this course, my focus on the details have changed the way I use Procreate. There have been many aha moments, and I hope you experience the same on your journey. You'll need an iPad. As of this class's release date, the current version of Procreate 5X is supported on most recent iPads as long as your iOS version is up to date. Procreate is an iOS app that runs on the iPad and is available for download exclusively on the Apple App Store. It's a robust app, so if you find you love it, you may want to invest in a newer, more powerful iPad. It will run smoother. And then you'll need something to draw with. While you can use your finger as a drawing tool, ideally you'll want to use a stylus, and preferably one that supports pressure sensitivity, so you can experience a full range of brush features. For an optimal experience, I highly recommend an Apple Pencil. There's no comparison to the sensitivity and detail you can achieve. Okay, let's get started on the fun stuff. To create a new drawing or painting, open Procreate and you'll land in the gallery view. Tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and from the drop-down menu, select a standard size or create a custom size. If you choose to create a custom size, tap on the black box with the plus icon in the upper right-hand corner of the drop-down menu. From here, you can set up your document properties. You can name your file. You can adjust the width and the height. You can change the DPI, or dots per inch, of your file. And you'll also notice that you can see the maximum number of layers available to you with this file size. You can also control your color profile settings, your time-lapse video settings, and your canvas properties. If you want to change your background color, just tap on the white circle and select a new color for your canvas. You can also turn your background off completely if your final export is a PNG file that needs to be transparent. Now from here, just tap Create, and you're ready to go. As you create new documents, they will automatically be saved in the Procreate gallery. From within the gallery, you can manage individual drawings by placing your finger or stylus on the image and swiping to the left. A menu will appear, and from there you can tap to share, duplicate, or delete a file. I'm going to duplicate that file. This comes in handy when you like where a drawing is going, but you want to explore and save the original drawing. Next, in the upper right-hand corner is the gallery menu, which includes Select, Import, and Photo. You can select multiple images to preview, share, duplicate, or delete. Images can be imported from your files or cloud backup, plus you can import photos from your iPad. You'll also use the gallery space to organize your work. Imagine that the gallery is a real studio space and you have been so busy making art that all of a sudden you realize you have work laying around and you need to get it organized. You'll naturally start sorting similar work into piles. You can do the same thing in Procreate by creating stacks. To create a stack, tap on Select in the upper right-hand corner. Select multiple files, including previously made stacks, and then tap on Stack again in the menu, and they will automatically merge into one stack. Finally, let's add an additional level of organization by naming your files or stacks. To rename, tap on the name under the image thumbnail, and a window will open with the option to type in a new name. Now that you understand how the gallery works, you have no excuse but to keep things tidy. Understanding Procreate's tools and interface is essential to your overall experience. The interface is minimal and intuitive, especially when you get used to it. Let's take a look at the three main menus. Starting at the top right menu, you'll find your painting tools. Tap on the paintbrush, and you can draw or paint with hundreds of the brushes that are included with Procreate's library. The smudge and erase tools use the same brush library and will allow you to blend, smudge, erase, or lift paint from your artwork. The layer tool provides you with amazing flexibility when you're drawing by allowing you to separate art elements on different layers. And from the color palette, you can select colors, create new palettes, drag and drop the color into your artwork, and more. Now let's take a look at the sidebar controls. The top slider controls your brush size. You can control it by dragging the slider up for a larger brush or down for a smaller brush. The bottom slider controls your brush's opacity. Again, by dragging the slider up, you get 100% opacity, and by dragging the slider down, you get less opacity, more transparency. By tapping the small button in the middle of the sidebar, we activate the color eyedropper. This allows you to pick colors from a specific area of your canvas and then become the active color. And finally, on the bottom of the sidebar are our undo and our redo buttons. By tapping the undo button, you can undo your artwork or you can redo it. Finally, let's take a look at the top left menu. This menu includes all the features you need to make adjustments to your artwork. Let's take a look. Now, first I want to note that the word gallery is active navigation and automatically saves and closes your artwork and returns you to the Procreate gallery space. Next, the wrench is the action menu, and it contains the features you need to copy, paste, import, and share your images. If you tap on Add, you can insert a file, a photo, take a photo, add text, cut, copy, and even copy the overall canvas. If you tap on Canvas, you can crop and resize, edit your drawing guides, flip it horizontally and vertically, and even turn on the animation and page assist from this area. Your Share menu button allows you to export out all the file formats available. The video button controls your active time-lapse settings, including the option to export out time-lapse video. Your preferences can be controlled within this area, or you can get help, including the Procreate Handbook, from the Help menu. Adjustments is the next main menu item and controls all of your image adjustments, including color and image filters. The Selection tool lets you select various areas of your artwork to modify your image. And lastly, the Transformation tool can assist you in moving, distorting, and scaling your image. For such a powerful tool, the interface is surprisingly user-friendly. Basic hand gestures help you to navigate while using Procreate. To quickly undo, use a 2-finger tap. To quickly redo, use a 3-finger tap. To activate the color picker, tap and hold 1 finger on the canvas. To activate the pop-up copy and paste menu, drag 3 fingers from the top of your screen and pull them down to the bottom of your screen, and the pop-up menu will appear. And to hide your menu items and get a full screen view, tap all 4 fingers. These are just a few simple gestures to help you quickly navigate while painting and in flow. Procreate's brush library contains hundreds of brushes and are organized by their medium or style. All 3 tools, Paint, Smudge, and Erase, share the same brush library and all work the same, but with different results. The Paint tool is represented by the brush icon. Tap on the icon and select a brush, and try a few of them out. As you can see, I'm selecting different brushes, and each brush has its own separate characteristics. Now let's do the same with Smudge. If I tap on the smudge tool and select a brush, drag it across where I've already painted, you can see that depending on the smudge tool, it moves the paint around. And each smudge tool is going to react differently depending on what brush you use. Now let's do the same with the erase tool. Now the erase tool, it lifts the paint. So we're going to use a pencil style to lift, and you can see that it's lifting it with a pencil texture. It looks like it's white pencil, but it's actually lifting the paint. Now we can do the same thing with a stucco brush, and it's lifting it, but it is with a stucco texture. So play around with this. This is the best way to learn how to use different brushes and what different brushes do. Now I want to take a look at another key feature, and that is recent brushes. If you find you use the same brush over and over again, you can find the most recent brushes that you used in the recent brush set at the top list of your brush library. So if you scroll all the way to the top, you're going to find the recent brush list. Now, if you have a favorite brush and you want quick access to it, you can actually go into that recent brush list and pin the brush so that it's always there. You do that by selecting a brush, pushing it over to the left, and tapping pin. Now you can see that it has a star. Now it is going to stay in your recent brush set until you remove it. Again, you can push it over to the left and tap unpin. It's as easy as that. Now, if you find that when you're using the brush, you like to use specific types of strokes or weights of strokes, another feature is that you can lock in stroke weights or sizes. This is if I want the size really large, that's the size. If I want it really small, that's the size. Now let's say I really love that small stroke size. I can see me using that on a lot of different things. What I'm going to do is go over to the sidebar menu, tap on the nav bar for the size, and tap the plus sign in the upper right hand corner. And you can see now with that little blue bar, it is now activated that that size is locked in. Now, if I want to go with another size, like let's say I really like this size, again, tap the bar, the plus sign, and that size is locked in. So it's actually really easy to go back to those locked in sizes if you have an illustration style that you use a consistent line weight for. Now you can also do the same thing with the opacity. If I find that I like an opacity that is something like that for my illustrations, again, I can tap on that and lock that opacity in. Brushes are everything in Procreate. The more you explore, you'll find the brushes that you like to work with the most. But remember, this is digital, so you can undo and redo to your heart's content. So be curious and try them all. The more familiar you get with the brushes, you may wish they would react slightly different or in a specific way. Procreate's brushes are fully customizable within the Brush Studio. You can even create your own brushes. Tap on a brush you would like to edit, and this will open up the Brush Studio. The Brush Studio interface is divided into three parts: Attributes, Settings, and Drawing Pad. The Attributes menu contains 12 characteristics of your brush. You can adjust the shape or grain, and even adjust what size you would like that brush to actually be, as far as large and small, and even the opacity. And try it out once you make those adjustments. And if you want to, you can clear your drawing pad by tapping there. So My favorite setting that I use most often is the streamline setting. It controls how smooth your brush line is and especially comes in handy for lettering and really clean line drawings. To make this simple adjustment, tap on stabilization within the settings, draw a line, and then adjust your streamline to the right, and you can see that line tighten up. You can also adjust the stabilization. Now I'm going to clear that and draw a leaf, and you can see how clean that line is. Now if I turn that off, the drawing isn't quite as clean and perfect. I can do the same thing with this shape. I can adjust it, and you can see that that whole thing just kind of tightens up. This comes in really handy with different illustration styles. You'll of course have your favorite adjustments. The one thing to know is if you get lost in making adjustments, you can always cancel the overall edit to the brush. You may decide to create your own brushes or purchase and import brushes from inspired designers. A couple of my favorite websites to purchase brushes are creativemarket.com and designcuts.com. So explore and play. Color will bring your art to life in Procreate, so it's important to understand the color panel and all its features. Open the color panel by tapping on the color button, the icon farthest to the right on your top right menu. The color button displays your active color. The row below the color disk is your color history, displaying the last 10 colors that you've used, and your default color palette is displayed at the bottom of your color panel. But before we review the color selection options, let's quickly review how to use color in Procreate. To pick a color, simply tap on the color disk or select a color from your palette, and then you can tap on it and drag it right into a color within your layer. So if you look at the layer, I have one layer, and I was able to tap and drag that color right into that leaf. Now let's go back to our layers. We can also add color by selecting the background color layer and fill that as well. Let's take a look at the color selection options. The color disk is an easy way to quickly select colors. Just tap and drag the outer ring to select your hue and the inner circle to select how light, dark, or saturated you want the color to be. If you want more control over your color, you might try the classic palette and use the sliders to select your hue, the saturation of the color, or the darkness or lightness of that color. You can also use color harmony to select a specific color, or if you have colors such as branding colors, you can use the value palette to very specifically input hex codes, RGB values, and even specific values for hue and saturation. Now let's take a look at the color palettes. Procreate comes with several built-in color palettes, and you can also buy and upload color palettes if you choose to. But ultimately, you'll have your favorite colors to work with, so you want to create and manage your own color palettes. You can view the palettes through this compact view that we are currently looking at, or through a card view, which gives you a much bigger look at the actual color chip. Let's go back to the compact view. Now, if you want to create a palette for yourself, you can tap on the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner of your palette menu and select Create New Palette. Now let's go back to our disk and select a color. All you have to do is tap within that palette and add colors. Let's go back to the palette menu. Another way of adding color palettes is you can take a photo from your camera and it will automatically import colors from that photo. You can import a file or you can import a photo. So if I tap on New from Photo and go to my photos, I can select, and all the colors from that particular photo created a color palette. The last thing I want to show you is how to pick colors directly from your canvas. In the sidebar navigation between the brush and the opacity slider is the option button. By default, it is set to be the color picker. Now you can drag that color picker around, and wherever you land, it will become the active color. Now you can also just, with your finger, tap and hold, and that same color dropper will appear, and you can select, and that will be your new active color. So now it's your turn to select colors and create an amazing palette for your next project in Procreate. If you want more control and flexibility when drawing or painting in Procreate, layers are your answer. I use them in every piece of work I create. When I open up the layer menu, you can see that I have created all of the elements on separate layers. This gives me the freedom to make edits on a specific layer without affecting the other layers. The layers towards the top of the menu are at the top of your illustration, and the layers at the bottom of the menu are at the bottom of your illustration. I can manage my layers by tapping, holding, and dragging them up and down to reorder the layers. To activate a layer, tap on the layer and it will appear dark blue. This is now the primary or active layer in your drawing. If I drag the layer to the left, I can lock, duplicate it, or delete it. You can also group layers by dragging them to the right and selecting multiple layers at one time, and then grouping. At the very bottom of your menu is a background color layer. If you tap within the color box on that layer, you can change your background color. You can also turn the background color off completely, and this is necessary if you want to export transparent PNG files. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of using layers. I promise you that they will improve your overall Procreate experience. Select a layer and tap on it. You'll see a basic set of options that can be applied to that layer, such as rename, select, and copy. But there are also a few hidden gems that can change the way you draw and paint in Procreate. The two that I would like to share with you are Alpha Lock and the mask option. Let's start with Alpha Lock. By selecting Alpha Lock, you can lock the transparent or unpainted area of a layer. Once this is active, you'll only be able to paint within the existing artwork on that layer. So for example, I'm quickly adding a little color and texture to the shape. The unpainted areas remain completely untouched. How cool is that? This is ideal if you want to add texture and shading to your artwork on a layer, not to mention quickly adding a new level of interest to your art. Now let's explore the mask option. Masks are attached to a parent layer. When you draw on a mask, it will mask out and create transparent areas. But because it's technically on a separate layer, it's not making any permanent changes to that layer. So, a little pro tip, if you want complete transparency, you want to paint with black paint. If you want partial transparency, use a lighter value such as gray. And if you decide you want to remove some of the mask, you can use white as it will overwrite the darker paint that's on that layer. Now, another great thing about using layer masks is it gives you the opportunity to play without being destructive to your original layer. If you decide you don't like the result, all you have to do is turn off the layer or just completely delete it. As I mentioned, these are just two of Procreate's hidden gems, so be curious and play. By default, A normal layer is opaque, and the artwork on the top layer covers up the artwork on the bottom layers. But by changing the layer opacity and blend modes, you can create really interesting effects and how the layers visually interact with each other. Let's explore. To change the opacity and blend modes, tap on the N on the layer. The N represents the normal mode or the default mode. Right on the top is the opacity slider. Just slide it left to right and it changes the opacity. You can also from here change the mode and it will change how the color reacts to the colors below it. Now let's take a look at how some of the other colors will change when we change the modes. I admit, I tend to go for modes that create color overlays and have a transparent quality while it enhances the colors above and below. While you can see if you scroll through very quickly, and I'm going to start at the bottom down here, the color luminosity, it's actually subtracting color right out of it. But some of the colors create some really beautiful, and we're going to get back up here, darker color, for example, or a linear burn, or just darkening that color. And this green leaf is still normal. So we're going to actually add some transparency, or luminosity is the right word for that as well. But I would tell you there are no hard rules when using blend modes. They just give you more opportunity for creativity. Now, I have an excellent pro tip for you. If you import a photo of textured paper onto a layer, make it the bottom layer. As long as all of your modes have some luminosity to them, they will pick up the texture of the paper. Now you can see that two of our leaves do not have any luminosity. So if we go back into our layers and change that, for example, multiply is one that has luminosity. It picks up the texture of the layer. And as we're scrolling through, linear burn is another one. Let's pick linear burn. And the other one, the gold leaf, does not have any as well. So we're going to multiply that one. And that way it gives you this really beautiful textured image, and you would not be able to do this without the layer modes. So that's wow factor, don't you think? There are moments when you want to draw a perfect square or circle within Procreate, and the method for doing this is called Quick Shape. It's not built into the standard interface, so I'm going to share the tricks with you. To draw a line, just draw a line, and it doesn't matter how straight it is. As long as you hold it at the end, it will snap into a perfect line. Let's do that one more time. If you draw it, hold it, and if you continue to hold it, you can rotate it on its axis and decide where you want that to end. And as soon as you release, your line is drawn. Next, let's draw a square. Personally, I find squares to be a bit of a challenge in Procreate because it has to be pretty perfect to start. You also have to draw the shape in one motion without lifting your stylist. So let's draw it and hold it at the end, and as you hold it, it will snap into a shape. Now it's visually not perfect, but if we edit the shape, it still doesn't think it's a perfect enough square. But we can use these handles to adjust. And visually, it's a pretty perfect square. So let's try that one more time. Snaps into position, just like the line. If I continue to hold this, I can actually resize it and position it so it aligns nicely on the page. And then I can edit the shape, and this time it considers it more of a square. I think the first one maybe had a point that made it more of a polyline. We'll select square, and that square is complete. Now there's one other way to do this, and this applies with all quick shapes. It's a two-handed approach. You draw, hold, and while you're holding, you use your finger from your other hand to tap on the canvas. So let's try that. We'll draw, hold, tap on the canvas, and you can see it snapped into place. And again, I can rotate it at this point into perfect alignment. Now at this point, it still maybe isn't perfect square. So I'll select it, and again, the lines were just slightly off, and because it's a square, it opened up and it's not connecting, so I can draw that connector. As I said, squares are touchy in Procreate. Now let's try a circle. I find a circle much easier. You draw an oval or an ellipse, make sure that they connect, edit the shape, and you can turn it into a circle. Just like with the square, I can adjust the handles to change it into a different shape ellipse. As long as my menu is still open, I can turn it back into a circle. Now, one thing to know about quick shapes, just like anything else in Procreate, all brushes apply while using quick shapes. So I can use a textured brush with thicks and thins, draw the shape, connect, edit the shape, turn it into a circle, and it is a perfect circle, but because of the variant in strokes, thicks and thins, it just gives it a little bit more character. We can try one more. Connect, edit the shape, turn it into a circle. Again, it's a circle, but because I maybe put a little bit more pressure in one area of the drawing than the other, I have some thicks and thins. While I wish quick shapes were built into the interface, this is overall a pretty cool solution. There may be times when you want background guidelines to help with your composition or make it easier to draw something in 3D. We're going to take a look at how 2D isometric and perspective guidelines work and how they differ. You can activate the guidelines by going to the Action menu, selecting Canvas, turning on the Drawing Guide toggle, and edit Drawing Guide. We're looking at three different options: the 2D grid, the isometric, and the perspective. Now, to activate the perspective, you have to tap on the canvas and you'll get a 2 vanishing point perspective. We're going to delete one of them. Before we do that, we're going to set up the horizontal line. Now we can move that one around. Let's go back to 2D. With all of them, you can set the opacity by sliding the slider, the thickness, and the grid size. You can even numerically put in the grid size. You can also change the color of the grid if you would like to. Now, one last thing we're going to look at here is turning on assisted drawing. And let's take a look at what that does. Now, I've created a sample layer that has assisted turn on. If you tap on that, rephrase, you'll see the drawing assist is turned on. Now, when I draw with that, I can only draw vertically and horizontally. If I turn off drawing assist, I can draw freehand. Now let's turn off that layer and look at 2D. Now I have a 2D assisted. I'm going to turn on that layer, and you can see that I have drawn a chart using the assisted turned on. And then I drew a second layer below it with some freehand lettering and color, and I even used the grid line to plot out the percentages for the chart: 40, 30, and the 20. Now let's take a look at isometric. Turn that layer on, but then I have to go back into the drawing guide and turn on isometric. Now the first thing we want to look at is I have isometric assisted turned on, and if I draw on the layer, you can see that I'm only able to draw along the diagonal lines and the vertical lines. It's actually great for drawing 3D cubes and technical drawings, of course. And for a little bit of interest and depth, I created freehand shading for the objects. Now let's take a look at perspective. Again, go back in to the drawing guides. And now that I have the perspective drawing turned on, I can actually adjust the drawing guides. And this is where I had them turned on when I drew this. Turn that back on. Go to the assisted perspective layer. And you can see that if I draw, I'm only drawing along the perspective lines, except for my vertical lines and horizontal. And you can almost imagine that these could be trucks on the road. Now again, to visualize and add more interest, I created a freehand color layer below the perspective. This is really great for cityscapes and architecture, things like that. Your drawing or painting style will determine how often you use the guides, but it's good to know that they're there for you when you need them. Symmetrical drawing can easily be done in Procreate using the symmetry drawing guides. You can activate the guidelines by going to Actions menu, tapping on Canvas, activating the drawing guide, and edit guides. Just like with 2D isometric and perspective, you can adjust the opacity of the guides and the thickness and the color. We have a new option under symmetry, and that is the options button. If you tap on that, you'll see a vertical, horizontal, quadrant, and radial options. Vertical are 2 vertical segments. Horizontal is 2 horizontal segments. Quadrant is 4 segments, and radial is 8. We also have rotational symmetry, which is a mirrored image but flipped, and assisted drawing. With symmetry, you have to have assisted drawing on at all times, otherwise it won't work. So let's check out our vertical drawing settings. We're going to turn on vertical and select done. We have 2 vertical layers. Our first top layer has this little guy that needs to have a little bit of humanity added to him, or anatomy. So we're going to turn on the bottom layer, and because I like to draw on layers, I am going to draw on the lower layer. So let's select our tools and start drawing. As you can see, when I draw on one side of the vertical, the drawing happens in real time on the other side. Of course, this guy needs to communicate, so we need to give him some way to do that. Now he's ready to go. Now, this is an extremely quick and easy way to do some fun things, don't you think? Now let's go and look at the quadrant. We're going to turn on the quadrant layer, go back into the settings and edit the drawing guides, go under options, select quadrant. This time we're going to turn on rotational symmetry because I feel that rotational symmetry works really beautifully with a quadrant. Again, that flipping quality adds some interesting things with quadrant. So we're going to go back into done and select quadrant and start drawing. You can even use the quick shape to draw really perfect lines, perfectly shaped lines. They kind of snap into that shape. But what you can also do is drag and drop color to make it even more interesting. So that's actually a really cool way to test out different logo design options or icon options. So keep that in mind for that. Now let's take a look at radial. I have two layers for radial only because, again, I like to work in layers and I'm not sure what I want to do with it. So we have to go back in, edit the drawing guides, go under the options, turn on radial. I'm going to turn off symmetry because personally I like radial without the symmetry turned on. Select done and select my tools and colors. Open my layers and turn them on. That does help. And just start drawing. Instantly with radial, I get some really fun shapes. It's one of those things, it's kind of hard to screw up with radial because it's just so interesting. Actually on purpose created the second layer below, kind of made it my secondary layer, and now I'm going to go back in and draw into my second layer. Again, you can see how quickly the radial makes things interesting and fun to play with. You can incorporate an eraser and go back in and lift some of your color out. So I admit, I am obsessed with symmetrical drawing. There's a strange satisfaction and meditative quality to the experience, so I highly suggest to try it out for yourself. Create your own digital sketchbook using Procreate's Page Assist feature. You can create multiple pages and export them as a multi-page PDF and other file formats. Let's get started. Tap on the wrench icon in the upper left-hand corner to open the action menu. Tap on the canvas and then turn on your Page Assist switch. Notice the Page Assist bar is at the bottom of your screen. First, let's take a look at the timeline. It's very basic. You can see all of your pages, and you have the option to create a new page. If I tap on that, I've created a new page, and I'll just quickly draw on it. That would be the background for something, maybe. And if I open up my layers panel, you can see that I now have a new page 8 within my pages. Now let's scroll down and we can see all of my pages, and really it starts from the bottom. You've got the journal cover, England, and the different images. Technically, my very first layer is my paper layer. Page Assist offers you an opportunity in your first frame to turn that first frame on as a background that will be consistent across all of your pages. Now, if I turn that background off, you can see I still have the pattern on my first page, but there's no background pattern on any of the additional pages. So if I go back to that, I can turn that back on and I have a texture background on all pages. So again, it's that very first layer you have that opportunity to do that on. You can either import a texture or use a brush to create a texture. So once you're ready to share your sketchbook or journal, you can export it by tapping on the action menu, again in the upper left-hand corner, tapping share, and then you're going to want to share your layers. You can either share a PDF, and there's different qualities of PDF you can export it out as, and that will export out as a multi-page PDF. You can export individual PNG files, or you can export an animation. If I select one of those options, you can see it's going really fast. I can just slow it down, and I can export that animation. So now you can use your digital sketchbook on your next trip, as a daily journal, or as a set of concept drawings for your next Procreate masterpiece. Now continue to play and go create. One of the coolest features within Procreate is the ability to paint on pre-made 3D model surfaces. Procreate does not create the 3D models, but it does allow you to import them. So let's get started. Create a new document. It doesn't matter what size. And then once you do that, go up into your action menu, the wrench in the upper left-hand corner, tap on that, and then tap on the Help submenu. Then tap on What's New. From there, you can tap on the Model Pack button, and you can download your models. Now, be a little patient. It may take several minutes to download. Once all the models have downloaded, you can go back to your gallery and you'll see all your models in your gallery. Select one of the models to paint. Now, while we may not cover everything about 3D and Procreate, I'm going to review all the basics so you will have the confidence to play and explore. When you open a model, you are going to want to open the layers to see how the model was built. There may be one layer or multiple layers. If there's multiple layers, you're going to paint each one individually. You can just start painting by taking your brush and painting on the model. Or we can be a little bit more methodical and consider the end results. I'm going to use the methodical approaches. We're going to cover a lot of the 3D features quickly. First, I'm going to drag and drop color into the different layers. Let's select the can, and I'm going to drag my color into that layer. Next, let's select the lid. Select a color from our palette, and we're going to drag it right onto that lid. Now you can see that I can move the can around. I'm moving it around with one finger, or if I use two fingers, I can zoom in and out. Okay? And depending on where you stop, it's going to move around on the axis. So let's go back to coloring. We're going to now paint the tab. And again, I'm going to just drag and drop that color. So that's the first thing to think about. Now, the great thing about dragging and dropping color is that it is filling up the space of that layer completely, versus if you were painting on it. Again, let's go to the lid. If you're painting on it, you have to manually cover it, and you can see it's kind of hard to get all the creases. So by dragging and dropping, we can cover the complete wire mesh, is really what it's called. So second, what we're going to do is make a decision about the lighting and the environment. I want you to tap on the action menu, the wrench in the upper right hand corner, and then tap on the 3D sub navigation, and then tap on edit lighting and environment. Now this takes me into an environment space, and we're going to tap on environment in the upper right-hand corner, and you can see all the pre-made environments that Procreate has provided us. So we can randomly just click through and see the difference in how the lighting is affecting that can. Now the other thing we want to look at is the lighting. So these cubes that you're seeing is the light. Now again, I'm moving this around with my finger. Up and down is my single finger, and zooming in is a double finger. I'm zooming in and out. Now we have three different lights right now. And if I move these lights around, you can see on my can the reflection that the light is picking up. Now you can also tap on the light and you can duplicate it. You can add saturation and intensity. Now, unfortunately, when I do this, I have to move my can so you can see what it's doing. I make that light a lot more intense. It's a really hot light. If I make it less, the light gets turned down. Now I can also duplicate a light, and now we have 4 lights. I can also add a light from tapping on the navigation in the upper right-hand corner. So you can see one thing that I find most useful is getting a bird's eye view right over top, and then I can move my lights around. It's almost easier. It's almost looking at it in 3D. Now let's move on to, do I want my surface to be flat or do I want it to be reflective? If we go into the layers, we can see that each model has its own base layer, and we can see that by tapping on the arrow. Now let's start with the can. If I tap on that 3D icon, I can see that it has a color, a roughness, and a metallic feature. Now there's several ways to manage this information. My favorite way of approaching adjusting roughness and metallic is going up into the adjustments menu in the upper right hand corner, tapping on that, and then tapping on hue, saturation, and brightness. Now I'm not going to touch the hue and saturation, but I am going to adjust the brightness. And if we use that slider, if we go to black on the brightness scale, the texture gets very flat. It's very, very smooth. And if we move it over to white, you can see, and it's very subtle, you can see that it's very flat. You don't see any reflections. Okay? So we're going to make this all the way to black so that it's very, very smooth. Now you can see that it's very smooth when I'm moving it around and the light is reflecting it. Okay? The next thing we want to adjust is the metallic. Again, we're going to do it the exact same way. Go up into the adjustments menu, tap on hue, saturation, and brightness, and scroll over. Now, this is just the opposite. If I move it to white, I get it very, very metallic. If I move it over to black, there's no metallic quality to it. So we're going to move that over and select that, go back in, and you can see how metallic that is now. You can see the reflections in the environment. Pretty cool. Now, one last thing I want to look at is when we're painting in a 3D view. As I mentioned, the first thing I like to do is drag and drop color, but I also want to look at how the stroke works if you're going to paint on this surface. So let's take some paint and start to paint on the surface. Actually, let's change the color. And I think what's happening, yep, you can see that what happened is I still have my metallic selected. So I want to go back out of here and just work on the base layer. Now I'm going to go in there and paint. Now you can see when I did that, unfortunately, it only paints the area that I'm viewing. It doesn't want to wrap around. So the way to get around that is to go up into my action menu, tap on Show 2D Texture, and now you can see how that is laying out in 2D. This is the can and then the bottom of the can. So now what I can do is paint on the can, and I'm going to stay within that can area, the teal area. And let's even add something fun for the bottom of the can. Now when I go back up into the action menu, tap on that wrench, go into the 3D submenu and turn off the 2D texture. Now you can see that it's painted all the way around where I painted it. And we even have a little special funness happening there. Now, the other thing that you can see, because I went in the 2D, it painted it on that directly on that metallic surface, and the yellow is metallic. Now, one more thing I want to very quickly look at is show you that just like when you're using Procreate to paint in 2D or a flat painting, you can add layers. Now I'm adding a layer to the can. I'm not adding a layer to the lid or the tab, only to the can. Now when I paint on that, again, let's select a different color. When I paint on that, it's flat. Okay, and that's because the paintbrush itself is flat. Now, there's a couple different things I can do. I can go in and select my layer modes and adjust how it's going to react on that layer. Or let's go back to just making that normal. Or I can rotate the can just so that we're not looking at that part of it. I can go up into that brush, tap on the brush, and if you go all the way to the bottom and select materials on your left-hand side, you can actually adjust how that brush is going to react on 3D surfaces. And this only applies to 3D surfaces. So we're going to open up the metallic and let's make it 100%. So now if I tap on it, there's going to be a reflection. Now the next thing I want to do is make it so that there is no roughness, so that it's a very glossy brush. And again, it's picking up all that reflection. And if I clear the drawing pad, you can see the difference. If I turn it to flat, you don't see any reflection. If I turn it to glossy, it picks up all the reflection. So let's click done, and now let's paint with that brush. And you're like, ooh, it's a very metallic quality, completely different. And you can do this with any brush. So that should give you the basics for getting started with Procreate on 3D models. If you want to continue to explore and work with other models, you can find them online at Adobe Stock Images and other online sources. Now, as always, don't be afraid to dive in and play. As your artwork evolves, you may decide to make some adjustments to color and maybe even add a few effects. Under the adjustment menu, you can edit colors, blur your images, add a glow, and so much more. My artwork is made up in multiple layers. Each image is on its own layer. Something to remember when you're making adjustments, you can only adjust one layer at a time. There are a few ways to adjust color. The one I use most often is hue, saturation, and brightness. You can adjust 3 things at one time. With the majority of the adjustments, you have the option to adjust the complete layer or use your pencil to adjust a specific area. We're going to look at adjusting complete layers. So if I tap on layer, you can see I can instantly make changes to my color by using the hue slider. That I can make further adjustments using the saturation slider and the brightness slider. Now let's take a look at the Gaussian blur. I've created a layer at the bottom of my layers as a drop shadow, and right now it has a really hard edge on it. If I go up under my adjustments and select Gaussian blur and layer, I can adjust how soft that blur is. So at the top, I can slide from left to right to adjust the blur, and you can see in real time the adjustment that is being made. I can make it almost really go away, or I can make it a nice soft blur which gives me a nice soft drop shadow. Adjust it a little bit more. Okay, now that we've looked at a couple of classics, let's take a look at a couple of surprisingly cool adjustments that definitely have wow factor. The first adjustment I'm going to make is called bloom. I've selected my layer, go under my adjustments and select bloom. Now I have a top slider that again I can slide to adjust, and then I have bottom navigation slider settings. So let's make an adjustment at the top first and adjust it. And as I go across, you can see that there's a glow that is happening on that flower, a bloom. And then I can adjust the transition of it, the size of it, and the burn. So this is definitely something you can adjust and play with to get it to where you like it. The last effect that we're going to check out is the halftone effect. It's super graphic and playful. Again, we're going to select the layer, go up under adjustments, and go down to halftone, and select halftone and the layer. Now again, the top is the adjustment slider, and the bottom gives us the option to do it full color, screen print, or newspaper. So the first thing I'm going to do is take that slider and slide it across so I can visually see how extreme that dot pattern can be. So to the left, it gets just very small. And as I scroll over to the right, the dot pattern gets really big. And then I can play with what it looks like in full color, screen print, which gives me a lot of contrast, and newspaper, which gives me a black and white quality to it. So this is just something extremely fun and playful. There are so many more effects to explore, so check them all out and see what works best for you. The selection and transformation tools in Procreate help you edit and transform your work in progress. We're going to look at both of these tools in tandem and look at some of the specific features and how they work together. So you can access your selection tool by going up into the left-hand corner of your menu and tap the third icon over, the one that looks like an S. If you tap on that, there's different ways to select. There's automatic, which means you can just tap on a specific area of your artwork. Whenever you want to clear anything, all you have to do is tap clear in the lower right-hand corner. You can select something via freehand. Again, you just tap and tap that gray button and your mask appears. And you can also select via rectangle and ellipses. We're going to select the aha via the freehand tool. And then we're going to go up into transform, which is your fourth icon over the little arrow next to selection tool. And we're going to look at what transform can do for us. So with the transformation tool, we can actually stretch freeform. We can move with the uniform tool, and that keeps everything in proportion. With the distort, we can distort the heck out of it by just dragging the different handles. Or we can use the warp tool and warp it even more. And that's actually pretty cool to be able to apply it to something that is maybe 3D. And then if you go down into the sub menu, you can actually control it even further using handles. Let's reset that. Go back to uniform. We can flip horizontally, vertically, rotate it, fit it to the screen. And that's what we want to look at the moment within the transformation. Now with the selection, when you're selecting, again, we're going to select this aha again. And if you want, you can copy and paste that and put it onto another layer. And you can see that it has created that particular content that we just copy and pasted and added it to a new layer. Now, if we go in and we create a shape, and we'll create a shape using the ellipse, Just want to show you how this mask works really quickly. If you tap invert, you can actually invert your mask completely. One more thing to know with this. If you have this color fill turned on, it will automatically fill the color. And we're going to clear that and then show you if I draw an area with that color turned on, it will fill it. It will also, if that color fill is turned on and you tap, it will fill the whole area that you selected. And it didn't fill the orange, it filled the whole background of this second layer. So that's a little bit about the selection and transformation tools. They're two tools that you'll find you use all the time, but you might not think that hard about it. So I suggest that you try them out, figure out what works best for you and what process works best for you, and try out all the submenu items. They do help you along the way. Procreate has designed its exporting features with everyone in mind, from casual doodlers to professional creatives. You can export individual files or select multiple files from the gallery and export bulk images, even animations. Let's start out by reviewing how to export files. From the gallery, tap Select from the top right menu and select one or multiple files. Then tap Share in the upper right-hand menu, and you'll see a list of image formats that you can export to. We're going to review these in just a minute. Now let's review how to export an image from within the editing mode. Tap on the wrench and open the Action menu. Select Share, and then select the format you wish to export your file. Within the sharing options, you can share flat images, images with layers, and animated files. The first option is the Procreate format. This is a raw file that contains all the data, including the original settings that make up your Procreate file. Next is the PSD file. This is an Adobe Photoshop file format. If your file has layers, they will export out with layers intact and will be able to be opened using Adobe Photoshop. The PDF is ideal for sharing your file with anyone, including printers, and has quality selection options, including good, better, and best. JPEGs are standard web-ready format files and provide an option for saving smaller compressed files to your iPad's photo album. PNG files are high-quality web-ready files with less compression quality. They can also be saved to your iPad photo album and have the added benefit of being able to be exported with a transparent background. TIFF files are saved as a flat file with no compression and perfectly preserves the image quality, a great choice for professionals. Now let's take a look at the shared layer export options. Again, we have PDF as an option, but this time the file is exported with all the layers into a multi-page PDF. So if your canvas has 3 layers, your PDF will have 3 pages. The PNG file exports all the canvas layers into a PNG file with layers. And then finally, we have the animated export options. And this particular file that I have open is an animated file. And when you export an animated file, you're exporting out a GIF or a video. So let's go back into our options and look at our export options. So GIFs are ideal for web animations. Animated PNGs are great for animations with translucent qualities or transparent qualities. MP4s are an ideal choice for web video, and HEVC files are similar to MP4s, but have some transparent qualities as well. You can share your images and videos to your iPad photo album via AirDrop, AirPrint, and any app or service available in the iOS sharing system. In the end, how you decide to export your file will be determined by how you plan on using the file. Share your process with a time-lapse video. A time-lapse video is a recording of your drawing or painting process. Procreate records each individual stroke as you create, but it all starts with a new canvas. So we're going to go back to the gallery, tap on the plus sign, and then tap on a new canvas by tapping on the black box with the plus sign. Now this is where you can set up a new canvas, but what we're really focusing on at the moment is in the left-hand column, we're going to tap on time-lapse settings. From here, you can set your canvas video settings. Every canvas comes with video settings that are 1080 and good quality. But if you want to change your settings to 2K or 4K or change the quality or compression, this is where you do it. And this is when you do it, because once you start your canvas and start working out your drawing, you can't come back to this. So it's important to know that. Now let's look at a work in progress. Once you're in a working file, you can review your progress by tapping on the wrench, clicking on video, and then once you're in there, you can see that we can replay the time-lapse video. We can turn the time-lapse recording on and off by turning off the toggle. And at this point, you can decide whether you want to completely purge what you've been doing and then restart it within the same drawing, or if you don't want to purge, it will just be off until you're ready to start again. We're going to turn that back on. Now you can also from here export your time-lapse video. You can't export it from anywhere else. So to export, you just tap on the export button and you can choose to export in full length or 30 seconds. Full length will export out your complete video, whether it's 2 minutes or 2 seconds. By selecting 30 seconds, Procreate will compress your video by removing frames to speed it up. This is a great option if you want to share your video via social. Now this works out real well for social, but you might only get a partial piece of your recording. Now let's go back and check out the replay of my current drawing. Now I have created a bit of a story showing how a flower blooms or grows. And I did this by layering on content on one layer on top of another. Now you can do this. It's an excellent way to tell a story with your time-lapse video. But you also might just want to show the progress of a painting and how you achieved that painting. No matter what you do, you have to share it and share it with your friends on social media. People love it. So just explore, have fun, and never stop sharing. There is nothing more exciting than seeing your artwork come to life with a simple animation. Using Animation Assist, you can build your animation using layers or groups of layers as frames. Let's walk through the process. Tap the wrench icon to open your action menu, and tap Canvas, and then select and turn on the Animation Assist toggle. You'll now notice that your animation timeline is active on your Procreate canvas. Let's take a look at the timeline. All existing layers in your document are now shown in the Animation Assist as frames in the timeline. The timeline are your layers in chronological order from right to left. In your layer palette, the layer at the bottom is your first frame, and the layer at the top is your last frame. To preview your animation, tap play. To stop your animation, press pause or tap anywhere on your canvas. Now let's go back to our layers. If I go down to my layers and go back to the very bottom where I have new group, open it up, this is actually my background for the entire animation. So when you're building an animation, groups equal a layer. So if I go to that layer and tap on it, you can see this particular layer is my background for my entire animation. If I turn that off and I play, you can see I have no background. If I go back and turn it back on, I now have a background that is consistent through the entire animation. So basically how I did this was I basically duplicated each layer and just moved that ball along slowly on each layer. If I go up under my settings, you can see the onion skinning frames, and I can adjust the onion skinning opacity. That shows me the before and after. So the frames that come before and then the frames that come after. I can even turn on a toggle that shows color the secondary frames. If I go back in, you can now see that the frames in the past are red and the future frames that are coming up that it's going to are green. I can show several onion skin frames. And again, I can adjust the opacity of those frames. So basically, again, what I did was I duplicated a ball and I transformed it and moved it along the timeline. I'm going to undo that so it stays in the timeline. Well, actually, let me take it out so you can see what it looks like. If I take that out and it's still within the timeline, but it's totally out of the bounce rate, the bounce path, and play it, you can see what happens. So if I go back in, I have to find it. There we go, it's that one. Go back to transform, put it back in kind of alignment again because I can see the onion skinning, the before and after. Go back out and play. Now you can also see if I actually drag with my finger or stylist, if I drag those frames, I can see exactly how that's going to move. Now let's go back into the settings. Right now, this is set on a loop. So it basically bounces, it goes out, and it repeats. It's a continuous repeat. If I go into the settings and I set ping pong, it's bouncing back and forth. So it goes once forward and once in reverse. I'm going to stop it altogether, go back to the beginning, turn on one shot, and play it. And that time, it's only going to play one time and stop. Now there's also this, again, we're going to go back into the settings. You can see again, I have the color secondary frames. If I turn on blend the primary frames, you can see that the active is bright green. Or if I turn off color secondary frames, it's blended in with the animation. It hasn't become transparent. It just blends in with the onion skin frames a little bit better. Personally, I don't see a lot of value in that particular option, but I'm sure there is one. So again, the other thing you can do here is really change those frames per second. So if we play it at 6 frames per second, you can see how slow that ball goes. But if we change it, go back to loop, it's much more effective. And speed it up even faster, slow it down. Now, if you want to export this out, you go up under the tools, go to share, and you can see at the bottom there are 4 options to export out: GIF, PNG, MP4, and HEVC. Depending on what your needs are will depend on how you want to export it out. If you want to export it out as a basic web video, MP4 is your best bet. Otherwise, try out the other ones to fit your needs. So that is a quick rundown of animation in Procreate. You could really go crazy with it. I just showed you the basics, but as always, have a blast. Procreate is an ideal tool for hand lettering. With so many brush options available, the style possibilities are endless. There is no right way to letter in Procreate, but I can suggest a process that may help you along the way. First, let's take a look at turning on your drawing guides. Go under the Actions tool, select Canvas, turn on your drawing guides, edit your drawing guides if necessary, and then create a layer that you will use to sketch out your lettering for positioning. This will give you a guide to draw your letters. I've created this layer. It's given me the positioning of where I want things overall, but I still have work to do. The first thing to do is count how many words that you're working with. I have 3 words: make, art, every day. So what I want to do is create 3 separate layers. 1, 2, 3. Now I can start to create my drawing on the 3 separate layers. I have 1 word for each layer. And the purpose for that is so that I can make adjustments to the words after I make them and create a overall composition that really works beautifully. First thing I want to do is select my brush. One of the brushes that I love to work with most with lettering is under inking called Ginsky ink. Now I'd get my color right, get my layers right. And while my guidelines might not be in perfect alignment, they're just giving me an idea of where the baseline is so I keep things straight. Again, I've started a new layer. And then down to the last word. Next thing I'm going to do is turn off that guideline layer. I really don't need it anymore. And I have everything on different layers. So now I want to create the composition. And because I have things on different layers, I can use the transformation tool to adjust and position things where I want them. Now for all of them, I'm really just resizing in proportion at the moment. Although on this particular one, I think I want to just distort it a little bit. You can see I can stretch it if I distort it. And I actually think I want to distort art a little bit. And I can make it taller. And if I really wanted to, I can really distort it. But at this point, I really just want to make it taller and get the words connecting the way I like them. Okay, I think that's good. Now I have everything working, all connected the way I want them to, and now the fun begins. I'm actually going to take all 3 layers and merge them together. And then I'm going to turn on the alpha lock. And what happens when you turn on the alpha lock is everything that is not content, you can't paint within. So the only thing I can paint on top of or within is the area that already has the dark blue, for example. So now I can go back into it since that alpha lock is turned on. And I would like some painting quality. And now because that alpha lock is turned on and all three layers are together, I can really add some interest to this. So I used the stucco brush. Now I'm blending it a little bit. I'm getting emphasis on that word art. Now it takes a little bit of work and a little bit of tweaking, but you can see how quickly that can be done. So if you love lettering and want to explore more brushes, there are several Procreate brush designers that have created amazing brushes for all styles of lettering. Look for them online at creativemarket.com and designcuts.com. Have fun and play.